Hello, sir. I'll go ahead and get started with our discussion post for the week. As we consider this week what Jesus means about not abolishing but fulfilling the law, he addresses 6 areas of life in Matthew 5:21 through 48. Choose one of these 6 areas and consider it based on your own ministry context. Write a brief but substantive explanation of the passage and include a few application questions for your audience to consider. In our last class, I wrote my paper, the end of semester paper over the 7th commandment, and one of the passages here that I used for that, and one of the passages obviously within this, the Sermon on the Mount, is about lust. So that is what I'll be talking through. We're looking at verses, chapter 5 in Matthew, verses 27 through 30. And I'll go ahead and read it and hop right in. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away, for it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. So for the exposition of this, well, for a little bit of background, first of all, Christ is talking to his disciples. Now, obviously, throughout our study, we also know that he's doing this also with the intent of everybody else around to be able to hear it. But he is speaking to his disciples. He's teaching those who are following him. And these disciples, first of all, were all Jews. So he leads this off with, you have heard it said. Now he is also in this passage saying, you shall not commit adultery. You've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. This is referring to the 10 Commandments, obviously. This is referring to the 7th commandment where God and Moses on 2 different occasions said that you shall not commit adultery. So Christ is saying, you've heard it said this way. This is what it means. In the context of our discussion post, he is not coming to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. He actually is going through a lot of those elements from Old Testament teaching and the 10 Commandments specifically, and he's showing that he's giving the correct interpretation of it. He's giving the correct extent or the purpose of those rules from the Old Testament. So you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Looking at the Old Testament, it wasn't that if you looked at it, it's if you did it. If you did commit adultery. At that point, there were laws and repercussions to the breaking of those laws, obviously, that were pointed out. If a man slept with another man's wife, or in however many variations of those relationships that you can think of, Christ is saying basically kind of like I kind of think of like a parent saying don't put your hand in the cookie jar kind of thing. It's like if you even think about putting your hand in the cookie jar, it's about the heart of it. It's about the Christ is saying here that it's not about doing the act, it's about wanting to do the act. It's about the heart posture that is leading to you doing that. So he's saying, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So again, it already goes back to the heart. It goes back to the intent. It goes back to the heart posture. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. I say both of these together because it is very easy for students or really any Christian to read this and think that Christ is just reiterating the same point. Obviously, this is about distancing yourself from those triggers, from those desires, from those actions that lead to adultery. So he's saying if your right eye causes you to sin, rip it out. But using the analogy of the right eye and the right hand, or the eye and the hand, really illustrate that it is the initial reaction from looking at something with the eye, and it is the literal action with doing something with the hand, or just doing something. So first of all, Christ says in verse 29, if your right eye causes you to sin. The first thing I want to point out here is that line right there, if your right eye causes you to sin, immediately establishes that the eye can make you sin. That literally what he's saying in verse 28, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. He's reiterating that it doesn't take you doing an action to sin. It doesn't take you an action to commit adultery, to commit, to break the seventh commandment, or to break that that union that God has created. It doesn't take an action. It takes a look. It takes an eye. It takes the heart posture. So he's saying to remove that from you. What trigger or what temptation are you putting yourself in, or what environment are you putting yourself in, or even what habit are you putting yourself in that may lead to adultery, which is his whole point with you. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. For it is better for you to lose that than to be thrown into hell. So he's saying it is better for you to remove yourself from that situation than to you to go into hell or to sin. The next part of that again reiterates the more finite version of the committing of the sin, and it says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. So he's saying here as well, if there is an action, or if there is something that you do that causes this, stop it. Stop. If there is something that you do that leads to it as well, like a habit or an environment, and placing yourself into that situation, or doing that action to begin with, cut it off. Stop it. Right. So he is illustrating that your eye causes you to sin, your hand causes you to sin. Now it's not just the hand. It's not just what you do. It is what you think, and it's what you feel. So that is my interpretation of this. The second part of this is to include a few application questions. I do have 3. My ministry setting is college-age men right now. So within that context, the first question is, how should this change our view of external and internal sin? Because a lot of people and a lot of new Christians think that adultery is the act of cheating, or it's the act of giving into pornography, or something like that. But the whole point of this question, and really the whole point of this section, is to show you that it's external and internal. So how should this change our view of external and internal sin? Hoping to get them to understand that it's not just the act, it is the thought, it is the heart posture, and it takes a heart change to get there. The second question is, are there any habits, relationships, or environments you may need to, or you may be around, that need to change or be addressed? So we have moved from the first question to understand what the sin is, right? Hopefully that they understand, to what are they doing in relation to that sin. So now we've established external and internal sin, and now I'm asking, what are you doing that has significance for this? What environments, or what actions, what relationships, what habits are you around that may lead to this, or may need to be addressed with relation to this sin? So I'm trying to get it to relate to them with this question. And if this is a Bible study, maybe some of them don't want to talk. You don't really have to push it, but this is a good question to have for examples. For other people to understand. And then the third question, what can we expect to happen after faithfully addressing these habits, relationships, or environments? This is a question that I try to ask, or I really think is a good question to ask when leading such a Bible study, or addressing these things, because a lot of people, or a lot of times in studies or in sermons, you just know that it's not right because this is what God has commanded, right? But we should also kind of talk about what it can lead to, like what should the outcome of this be? So what can we expect to happen after faithfully addressing these habits, relationships, or environments, or triggers, or temptations? And hopefully in this conversation, it leads to an understanding that your relationship with God obviously becomes stronger, but you get to see that the way that God designed man and woman and the relationship between them becomes more it becomes more pure. It becomes pure, and we gain a deeper understanding or a deeper appreciation for that creation and for the sacrament of marriage, and the condonement of marriage. We also then feel truly, if we are faithfully addressing this and faithfully repenting of this, we get closer, obviously, but we are faithfully participating in sanctification, and we get to feel what it's like to not have that guilt, to actually be free of sin. That's the key thing. So we get to see the work of the Spirit in our lives as we faithfully address this and faithfully repent, so that the Lord in response faithfully changes us according to His Word. So I apologize for the late post. You did say write a brief but substantive explanation. So I hope that was substantive enough. Obviously, there was a lot more that I could say, but I appreciate you. If you have any questions, please let me know. But you have a great day.